centuries, we waited for saviors, until humans set foot on land. Part 2. The arrival, the day the ship came through the clouds. Elder Yuna was standing on the roof of the council building. She had been standing there every day for the past week, watching the sky. The other council members thought she was being foolish. An old woman, waiting like a child for something that would never come. But Yuna did not care what they thought. She needed to see it with her own eyes. The ship was not what she expected in the old stories. The saviors came in vessels of light, great and beautiful things that shone like stars. This ship was different. It was made of metal, gray, and ugly. It moved slowly through the sky, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. It looked tired, like it had traveled a very long way. Yuna watched as the ship descended toward the empty field outside the city. The field had once been farmland, but nothing grew there now. It was the perfect place for something from another world to land. She hurried down from the roof, as fast as her old legs could carry her. By the time she reached the field, a crowd had already gathered. Word had spread quickly. The signal that the council had tried to keep secret was no longer secret. Everyone knew something was coming, and now it was here. The council guards tried to keep the people back, but there were too many of them. Thousands of Velans had come to see the ship, pushing and shoving to get a better view. Some were crying. Some were praying. Some were silent, too afraid to make a sound. Yuna pushed through the crowd until she reached the front. High Counselor Byung-ho was already there, standing with a group of soldiers. His face was hard and serious. "We do not know if they are friendly," Byung-ho said when he saw Yuna. "We must be careful. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already," Yuna replied. "They have crossed the stars to reach us. We should not greet them with weapons." Byung-ho did not answer. He kept his hand on the weapon at his side, ready to give the order to attack. The ship sat in the field, silent and still. For a long moment, nothing happened. The crowd held its breath. Yuna felt her heart beating so hard, she thought it might break. Then a door opened on the side of the ship. A ramp extended down to the ground. Yuna squinted, trying to see into the darkness inside the vessel. She expected something magnificent, something powerful. She expected God's dot instead. A small figure stepped out into the light. The being was shorter than a Velan, with smooth skin the color of earth after rain. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face with 2 small eyes that blinked in the gray light. It wore a strange suit that covered its body, with a helmet over its head. The being moved slowly, carefully, like it was afraid of falling. More beings followed the first one. Yuna counted 12 of them, all similar in shape and size. They were so small, so fragile. They did not glow with power. They did not carry weapons of light. They looked like children playing in suits too big for their bodies. The crowd was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The first being reached up and removed its helmet. Underneath was a face much like a Velan face, but different in small ways. The eyes were smaller. The nose was longer. The hair on its head was black and thick. The being spoke, but the words were strange and meaningless. It stopped, touched something on its suit, and spoke again. This time, the words came out in the Velan language, mechanical and flat. "We come in peace," the being said. "We are humans, from the planet Earth. We received your signals. We have traveled far to meet you." Humans. Yuna had never heard the word before. She looked at these strange creatures, so different from the saviors she had imagined. They were not gods. They were not even impressive. They looked like they might blow away in a strong wind. High Counselor Byung-ho stepped forward. "I am the leader of the Velan people," he said. "Why have you come to our world?" The human who had spoken first stepped forward as well. "My name is Doan," he said. "I am the captain of this ship." We came because you asked for help. Your signals traveled through space for many years before they reached us. We heard your cry for salvation, and you came to save us? Byung-ho asked. There was doubt in his voice. Yuna could hear it clearly, though Yoon was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head. We came to try, he said. We cannot promise to save you. We are not gods. We are just people, like you. But we have learned some things about healing sick worlds. We want to share what we know. The crowd began to murmur. Yuna heard disappointment in their voices. These were not the saviors from the prophecy. These were just small, weak beings from another planet. What could they possibly do that the Velans had not already tried? But Yuna was looking at the human called Do-hyun. She was looking at his eyes. They were small and strange, but she saw something in them that she recognized. She saw determination. She saw stubbornness. She saw the refusal to give up. You traveled across the stars, Yuna said, stepping forward. How long did the journey take? Do-hyun turned to look at her. 73 years, he said. Many of us were born on the ship. Some of us died on the ship. We never stopped believing we would reach you. 73 years. These beings had spent 73 years crossing the darkness of space, just to answer a call for help from strangers they had never met. Yuna felt something stir in her chest. Why? She asked. Why would you do this? Why would you sacrifice so much for people you do not know? Do-hyun smiled. It was a strange expression on his alien face, but Yuna understood it. Because we know what it is like to watch your world die, he said. Our planet Earth was sick once. We poisoned our air. We killed our oceans. We almost destroyed everything. We came very close to ending ourselves. But you survived, Yuna said. We learned, Do-hyun replied. We learned that nothing is hopeless if you refuse to give up. We learned that even a dying world can be healed. It is not easy. It takes time and work and sacrifice. But it can be done. He looked around at the gray sky, at the brown earth, at the sick and tired Velans gathered in the field. Your world is very sick, he said. Perhaps sicker than ours ever was. We do not know if we can save it. But we will try. We will try with everything we have. The crowd was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was not the silence of fear or disappointment. It was the silence of people who were beginning to believe. Elder, Yuna stepped forward until she was standing right in front of the human captain. She was much taller than him, but somehow he did not seem small anymore. Welcome to Vila, she said. We have waited a very long time for you. Do-hyun nodded. Then let us not waste any more time, he said. Show us your world. Show us how sick it is. And then we will show you how to make it better. Behind him, the other humans were already unloading equipment from the ship. They moved quickly, with purpose. They did not look like gods or saviors. They looked like workers ready to do a job. And for the first time in 800 years, the Velan people began to hope that maybe, just maybe, they would not have to die. For centuries, we waited for saviors, until humans set foot on Lampart 4, the turning tide. 3 years had passed since the humans arrived on Vila. Elder Yuna stood on the bank of the great river that flowed through the capital city. For as long as anyone could remember, the river had been brown and thick with poison. Mothers warned their children to stay away from it. Fish had not lived in its waters for centuries. But today, something was different. Yuna leaned forward and looked at the water. It was still brown, still dirty, but it was lighter than before. She could see deeper into it. And there, just below the surface, she saw a flash of silver. A small fish, swimming against the current. She fell to her knees and wept behind her. A crowd had gathered. Valens from across the city had come to see the miracle. The news had spread quickly. Life had returned to the dead river. It was just one small fish, but it was enough. It was proof that the work was succeeding. Yunji pushed through the crowd and knelt beside Yuna. "We detected the fish last night," she said. "We were not sure at first. We thought our sensors were wrong. But they were not wrong. The river is healing." "How?" Yuna asked, wiping the tears from her eyes. "How is this possible so soon?" "The bacteria worked faster than we expected," Unji explained. "The Velen soil is different from Earth soil. The bacteria adapted. They changed. They became better at eating the poison. It is still not fast enough, but it is faster than we hoped." More people were arriving now. Young and old, sick and healthy, they came to see the river. Some of them jumped into the water, even though it was still dirty. They laughed and splashed and celebrated. For the first time in their lives, they were swimming in a river that was getting cleaner instead of dirtier. Captain Do-hyun found Yuna in the crowd. He was smiling widely, something he rarely did. "This is good news," he said, "but we cannot stop now. There is still much work to do." "I know," Yuna said, "but let the people celebrate. They need this. They need to see that their hope is not foolish." Do-hyun nodded. "You're right. Today we celebrate. Tomorrow we work even harder." The celebration lasted 3 days. Valens came from distant villages to see the river. They brought food and music and stories. They danced in the streets like their ancestors had danced, long ago when the world was green. The humans joined them, learning the strange Velen dances and teaching Earth dances in return. During the celebration, something else began to change. Before the humans came, many Velens had been suspicious of them. These strange small beings with their odd machines and foreign ways. Some had even called them invaders, claiming they wanted to take over Vila for themselves. But now, seeing them dance and laugh and celebrate alongside the Velen people, those suspicions began to fade. Young Velen children followed the humans everywhere, asking endless questions. "How does your ship fly? What is Earth like? Do you have families? Do you miss your home?" The humans answered every question patiently, even when they had answered the same question 100 times before. One young Velen girl named Hana became especially attached to Yunji. She followed the human scientist everywhere, watching everything she did. Yunji taught her how to read the soil sensors, how to mix the bacteria cultures, how to understand the data from the air filters. Hana learned quickly. She was smart and eager and unafraid of hard work. "You should be a scientist," Yunji told her one day. "You have a good mind for this work." "Can I?" Hana asked. "Even though I am just a girl from a dying world." Yunji smiled and put her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Your world is not dying anymore," she said. "It is getting better, and you can be anything you want to be. On Earth, we learned that the best ideas come from people who others thought were not important. Women, poor people, young people. They saw things that others missed. They solved problems that others could not solve." Hannah looked up at the sky. For the first time in her life, she could see patches of blue between the gray clouds. The air filtering stations were working. Slowly, day by day, the sky was clearing. "I want to help save my world," Hana said. "Then you will," Yunji replied. "I promise you." As the months passed, more changes came to Vila. The first new plants began to grow in the cleaned soil. They were small and weak at first, just tiny green shoots pushing up through the brown earth. But they grew stronger every day. Soon there were entire fields of green, spreading across the landscape like a slow tide. The Valens had never seen such things. Children who had grown up surrounded by gray and brown stood in wonder before fields of green grass. They touched the leaves carefully, afraid they might break. They smelled the flowers and tasted the fruits and laughed with pure joy. Elder Yuna watched all of this with quiet happiness. She was very old now, older than any Velen in living memory. Her body was weak, and her eyes were failing. She knew she did not have much time left. But she had seen enough. She had seen the impossible become possible. One evening, Daoyun came to visit her in her small house. He brought a gift, a single red flower grown in the new clean soil. Yuna held it carefully, feeling the soft petals between her fingers. "I never thought I would hold a flower," she said. "I saw them in pictures, but I never believed I would touch one." "There will be many more flowers," Do-hyun said. "Many more than you can count. This is only the beginning." Yuna nodded slowly. "I know I will not see the end," she said, "but I am not sad. I have seen enough to know that the end will be good." "You have done more than you know," Do-hyun told her. "You gave your people hope when they had none. You believed in us when others did not. Without you, none of this would have been possible." "Without you, none of this would have been possible," Yuna replied. "You came across the stars to save strangers. You worked beside us like brothers and sisters. You taught us that we are not alone in the universe, that somewhere out there, someone cares." She looked out the window at the clearing sky. More stars were visible now than ever before. Each one was a sun, perhaps with its own planets, its own people, its own stories. The universe suddenly seemed much larger and much more wonderful than she had ever imagined. "Will you stay?" she asked. "When the work is done, will your people stay on Vila?" Do-hyun thought about the question. "Some will stay," he said. "They have made homes here. They have friends here. But others will leave. There are other worlds out there, other signals calling for help. We will go where we are needed." "You are good people," Yuna said. "Strange and small and different, but good. The universe is lucky to have you." Do-hyun smiled. "And we are lucky to have met you. When we first received your signal, we did not know what we would find. We hoped for the best but prepared for the worst. What we found was a people worth saving, a world worth healing, a civilization that refused to give up, even after 800 years of suffering." He stood up and looked out the window beside her. "That is what impressed us most, you know? Not your technology or your buildings or your history, your strength. Your refusal to surrender. That is something we understand very well. That is something we respect more than anything." Outside, rain began to fall. It was clean rain, washed through the air filters, free of the poisons that had plagued the planet for so long. Valens ran outside to stand in it, to let it fall on their faces, to taste it on their tongues. Children danced and laughed and played in the puddles. Yuna smiled and closed her eyes. She could hear the rain falling, the children laughing, the world healing. It was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. The tide had turned. The darkness was retreating, and the light, at long last, was beginning to shine. For centuries, we waited for saviors, until humans set foot on land. Part 1. The dying world, the sky above the planet. Vala had not been blue for 800 years. Elder Yuna remembered the old paintings in the museum, the ones that showed green fields and clear water. She had never seen such things with her own eyes. No one alive had. The world she knew was gray and brown and dying. Yuna walked slowly through the streets of the capital city. Her bones were old and tired, but she made this walk every morning. She liked to watch the people. She liked to see the children playing in the dust, even though the dust made them cough. Life continued, even on a dying world. That was something beautiful, she thought. The Velen people were tall and thin, with skin the color of pale sand. They had large eyes that could see well in the dim light of their poisoned sky. Long ago, their ancestors had been strong and healthy. Now, most Velens were sick in some way. The air was bad. The water was worse. The food they grew was weak and gave little strength. Yuna stopped at a small fountain in the center of the market square. The fountain had been dry for 200 years. It was just a stone decoration now, a reminder of better times. She sat on its edge and watched a young mother carry her child across the square. The child was coughing. "Elder Yuna," a voice called out. She turned to see a young man running toward her. His name was Taiho, and he worked as a messenger for the council. He was breathing hard when he reached her. "The council calls for you," Taiho said. "There is news." Yuna sighed. There was always news, and it was never good. Another water source had gone bad. Another field had died. Another village had been abandoned. She had heard such news 1,000 times. "What is it this time?" she asked. Taiho shook his head. "I do not know, Elder, but they say it is important." "Very important." Yuna stood up slowly. Her joints hurt, but she did not show the pain on her face. She had learned long ago to hide her suffering. Leaders could not show weakness, even old leaders who had seen too much. The council building was the largest structure in the city. It had been built 500 years ago, when the Velen people still had hope. The walls were made of white stone that had turned gray from the dirty air. Inside, the halls were cold and empty. There was no fuel to waste on heating. Yuna entered the main chamber and found the other council members already seated. There were 12 of them in total, old men and women who carried the weight of their people on their shoulders. At the head of the table sat High Counselor Byung-ho, a stern man with deep lines on his face. "Elder Yuna," Byung-ho said, "thank you for coming so quickly. What has happened?" Yuna asked as she took her seat. Byung-ho looked at the others, then back at Yuna. "Our listening stations have detected something. A signal from space." Yuna felt her heart beat faster. Signals from space were rare. In her lifetime, there had only been 2, and both had been natural events, nothing more than echoes of distant stars. "What kind of signal?" she asked. "It appears to be artificial," Byung-ho said. "It is organized, repeating. Our scientists believe it is a message." The room fell silent. Yuna looked around at the faces of the other council members. She saw fear in some eyes, hope in others. For 800 years, the Velen people had searched the stars for help. They had sent their own signals into the darkness, begging for salvation. No one had ever answered. Could it be them? Asked Counselor Myray, an elderly woman with kind eyes. The saviors from the prophecy? The prophecy. Yuna knew it well. Every Velen child learned it before they could walk. Long ago, when the world first began to die, a wise woman named Sua had claimed to see the future. She said that beings would come from the stars to save the Velen people. They would heal the land and clean the sky. They would bring life back to a dead world. For centuries, the Velens had believed in this prophecy. They had built great listening stations to search for signals. They had prayed to the stars every night. But as the years passed and no saviors came, belief had turned to doubt. Now, most Velens thought the prophecy was just a story, a lie told to give false hope to a doomed people. "We cannot know yet," Byung-ho said. "But the signal is getting closer. Whatever is sending it is moving toward our planet." Yuna closed her eyes. She had stopped believing in the prophecy many years ago. She had watched too many people die, too many children suffer. No saviors were coming. The universe did not care about the Velen people. They would die alone on their poisoned world, forgotten by the stars. But what if she was wrong? "How long until it arrives?" she asked. "Our scientists estimate 30 days. Byung-ho answered. 30 days. In 30 days, everything could change. Or nothing could change. The signal could be from another dying civilization, searching for help just like the Velens. It could be from machines with no life inside them. It could be from beings who wanted to harm them, not help them. What do we tell the people?" Counselor Myray asked. Byung-ho shook his head. Nothing. Not yet. We cannot give them hope that might be false. We have done that too many times before. Yuna understood. She remembered the last time a signal had been detected 40 years ago. The people had celebrated in the streets. They had believed their saviors had finally come. When the signal turned out to be nothing, the despair had been terrible. Many had taken their own lives. The Velen people could not survive another disappointment like that. We will watch and wait, Byung-ho said. When we know more, we will decide what to do. The meeting ended, but Yuna did not leave. She sat alone in the empty chamber, staring at the stone walls. She thought about her grandmother, who had died believing the saviors would come someday. She thought about her mother, who had lost that belief and died in sadness. She thought about herself, an old woman at the end of her life, sitting in a cold room on a dying planet. Outside the window, the gray sky stretched on forever. Somewhere beyond that sky, something was coming. Yuna did not know what it was. She did not know if it would save them or destroy them, or simply pass them by without a second thought. But for the first time in many years, she felt something strange in her heart. It was small and weak, like a tiny flame in a great darkness. She was afraid to give it a name, afraid it would disappear if she looked at it too closely. It was hope. And hope, on a dying world, was the most dangerous thing of all. For centuries we waited for saviors, until humans set foot on land. Part 3. The impossible task. The human scientist named Yoonji stood in the middle of a dead field, holding a small device in her hands. She pressed it into the gray soil and waited. A light on the device turned red. She pulled it out, walked 10 steps, and tried again. Another red light. Elder Yuna watched from a distance. She had been following the humans for 3 weeks now, observing everything they did. She did not understand most of their equipment or their methods, but she wanted to learn. She needed to understand these strange beings, who had crossed the stars to help her people. Yoonji looked up and saw Yuna watching. She smiled and walked over, her boots leaving prints in the dead earth. The soil is very bad, Yoonji said. Her Velen had improved greatly since she arrived. She no longer needed the translator machine to speak. There are poisons deep in the ground, heavy metals, toxic chemicals. Some of them have been here for hundreds of years. We know this, Yuna said. We have tried to clean the soil many times. Nothing works. Yoonji nodded. The poisons are too deep. You cannot clean them with the methods you have. But we have other methods. Slower, but more complete. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Inside was something brown and wet. It looked like mud. This is a special kind of bacteria, Yoonji explained. Living things, too small to see. They eat poison. They break it down into things that are not harmful. On Earth, we use bacteria like this to clean our worst places. It takes years, sometimes decades. But it works. Yuna looked at the small container. You are saying that this mud can save our world? Yoonji laughed. It was a warm sound, full of life. Not just this mud. Millions of containers of this mud. And other things too. Special plants that pull poison from the ground. Machines that filter the air. Water cleaners that remove toxins. It is not one solution. It is many solutions working together. How long? Yuna asked. How long until our world is clean? Yoonji's smile faded. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the endless gray landscape. I do not want to lie to you, Elder. I do not know. Maybe 50 years. Maybe 100. Maybe longer. Your world is very sick. The sickness has gone very deep. 100 years. Yuna would be long dead by then. Most of the Velens alive today would be dead. But their children might live. Their grandchildren might see a green field, might drink clean water, might breathe fresh air. Tell me what you need, Yuna said. Tell me what we must do. Over the next few days, Yoonji and the other human scientists presented their plan to the council. It was complicated and difficult. It required enormous amounts of work and resources. Many council members were doubtful. Some were angry. You ask too much, Councillor Myri said during one meeting. Our people are weak and sick. We do not have the strength for such labor. Captain Do-Yun stood up to respond. He was smaller than everyone else in the room, but his voice was strong. We do not ask you to do this alone, he said. We will work beside you. We will teach you everything we know. We will share all our technology freely. But we cannot do this without you. Saving your world is not our task alone. It must be a task you share. Why should we believe you can succeed? High Counselor Byung-ho demanded. Our greatest minds have tried for centuries. They all failed. What makes you think you are different? Da-Hyun looked at the High Counselor with steady eyes. Because we have done it before, he said. Our planet Earth was dying. We had wars. We had pollution. We had disasters that killed millions. We came very close to destroying ourselves completely. Some people gave up. They said it was hopeless, that the damage was too great to repair. But others refused to accept that. They kept working, kept trying, kept believing. And in the end, they saved our world. He walked to the center of the room, where a screen displayed images of Vela's poisoned landscape. Your world is sick, but it is not dead. There is still life here. There is still hope. The question is not whether your world can be saved. The question is whether you are willing to fight for it. The room was silent. Yuna watched the faces of the other council members. She saw doubt in many eyes, but she also saw something else. She saw a spark, small but growing. I will fight, she said, standing up. I am old. I will not live to see the end of this work, but I will start it. I will work until my last breath, and then others will continue after me. One by one, other voices joined hers. Councillor Myre, Councillor Byung-ho, others whose names would be remembered in the histories that were yet to be written. By the end of the meeting, the decision was made. The Velen people would not give up. They would fight for their world. The work began the next day. Yoonji led teams of Velens into the dead fields to plant the bacteria that would eat the poison. She worked alongside them, never asking them to do anything she would not do herself. When the sun was hot, she sweated. When the rain fell, she got wet. She showed the Velens that she was not above them, that she was their partner in this struggle. Captain Do-Hyun organized the construction of air filtering stations around the capital city. The work was hard and the machines were complicated, but he explained everything patiently. When workers made mistakes, he did not shout or blame. He helped them understand what went wrong and how to fix it. The other humans worked just as hard. They slept little. They ate the same poor food as the Velens. They breathed the same bad air. Some of them got sick. One of them, a young man named Junho, collapsed from exhaustion and had to rest for several days. But as soon as he could stand, he went back to work. Yuna asked Do-Hyun about this one evening, as they watched the sun set behind the gray clouds. Your people work so hard, she said. You suffer for us. Why? We are strangers to you. We are not your family, not your tribe. Why do you care so much? Do-Hyun thought about the question for a long time before answering. On Earth, there is a belief that we are all connected, he said. Not just humans, but all living things. When one part of the universe suffers, we all suffer. When one world dies, something is lost that can never be replaced. He turned to look at her. We almost lost our world because we forgot this truth. We became selfish. We cared only about ourselves, only about today. We did not think about tomorrow, or about the generations that would come after us. By the time we understood our mistake, it was almost too late. But you learned, Yuna said. Yes, we learned. And now we try to share what we learned with others. We cannot undo the mistakes of our past, but we can help others avoid making the same mistakes. That is why we came here. That is why we will keep working until the job is done. Yuna looked out at the dying landscape. In the distance, she could see the lights of the first air filtering station, beginning its long work of cleaning the sky. It would take years, decades, perhaps a lifetime, but it was a beginning. My people have a prophecy, she said. It says that saviors will come from the stars to save us. For centuries, we waited for gods to descend from the heavens. We expected power and glory and miracles. She smiled and put her hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. Instead, we got you. Small, fragile beings who work hard and get tired and make mistakes. And I think perhaps that is better than gods. Because gods do not understand suffering. They do not know what it means to struggle. But you do. You know exactly what we are going through, because you have gone through it yourselves. Do-hyun smiled back. We are not saviors, he said. We are just people trying to help. The real saviors are the ones who will continue this work after we are gone. Your children. Your grandchildren. They will be the ones who finally heal this world. Above them, through a small gap in the clouds, a single star appeared. It was the first star Yuna had seen in months. She took it as a sign. The impossible task had begun. And for the first time, it did not seem quite so impossible after all. For centuries, we waited for saviors, until humans set foot on Lampard 5, the truth of saviors 20. Years had passed since the humans landed on Vila. Elder Yuna had died peacefully in her sleep 5 years ago. Surrounded by flowers she had never thought she would see. But her memory lived on in the hearts of her people, and in the world that was slowly coming back to life. Hana stood on the stage in the center of the great square, looking out at the crowd. She was no longer a young girl following Yoonji through the fields. She was a grown woman now, one of the leading scientists on Vela. She had spent her entire adult life continuing the work. The humans had begun. Today was a special day. Today, the first flower bloom would be celebrated. All across the planet, fields that had been dead for centuries were now exploding with color. Red flowers, blue flowers, yellow flowers, purple flowers. Colors that most Velans had never seen in nature. It was a day of joy, a day of remembrance, a day of gratitude. The crowd in the square was enormous. Velans had come from every corner of the planet to witness this moment. Among them, scattered throughout the crowd, were humans. Some were the original crew members who had stayed on Vela and made it their home. Others were children born on Vela, half Velan and half human, with features that blended both peoples. Hana raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. 20 years ago, she said, her voice carrying across the square, we were a dying people on a dying world. We had given up hope. We believed the universe had forgotten us, that we would fade away alone in the darkness. She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. Old and young, Velan and human, all listening with the same attention. Then they came. 12 beings from a distant planet called Earth. They were not gods. They were not warriors. They were scientists and engineers, teachers and workers. They came in a ship that was old and tired after a journey of 73 years. And they brought us the most precious gift anyone has ever received. They brought us hope. In the crowd, Captain Do-hyun stood beside Yoonji. They were both older now, their hair gray, their faces lined. But their eyes were bright and alive. They had stayed on Vela, watching the planet transform year by year. They had seen the rivers run clear and the forests grow tall. They had seen Velen children run and play in fields of grass, laughing in air that no longer made them cough. Hana continued her speech. For centuries, we believed in a prophecy. We believed that saviors would come from the stars to rescue us. We expected miracles. We expected power beyond imagination. We expected beings who could wave their hands and make all our problems disappear. She shook her head and smiled. What we got was something different. Something better. We got people who worked hard, who made mistakes, who got tired and sick, who struggled just as we struggled. We got partners, not saviors. We got teachers, not gods. She looked directly at Do-Yoon and Yoonji. You taught us something more important than any technology. You taught us that saving a world is not the work of gods. It is the work of people who refuse to give up. It is the work of hands that get dirty and backs that get tired. It is the work of generations, one building on the work of another. The crowd began to cheer. Valens and humans alike raised their voices together, celebrating not just the flowers, but everything they represented. Centuries of suffering were ending. A new era was beginning. After the ceremony, Hana found Do-Hyun and Yoonji in the garden behind the council building. The garden had been Yuna's final project, a place of beauty and peace where anyone could come to think and rest. Now it was full of flowers and trees, buzzing with insects and singing with birds. That was a beautiful speech, Yoonji said. Embracing Hana, Yuna would have been proud. I learned from the best, Hana replied. Both of you. All of you. Everything I am, I owe to what you taught me. Dawn shook his head. We taught you skills and knowledge. But your strength, your determination, your love for your people, those came from within you. Those came from Vela itself. They sat together on a bench beneath a tree that had not existed 20 years ago. The sky above them was blue, truly blue, with white clouds drifting peacefully across it. In the distance, mountains that had been hidden by pollution for centuries were now visible, their peaks covered in white snow. Will you leave now? Hana asked. The work is mostly done. Vela is healing. You could go home to Earth, see the world where you were born. Eunji and Do-Hyun looked at each other. There was a silent conversation between them, the kind that comes from decades of partnership. Vela is our home now, Yoonji said finally. Earth is where we came from, but this is where we belong. We have friends here, family here. We have watched this world come back from the dead. How could we leave? Besides, Do-Hyun added, the work is not done. It will never be done. Healing a world is not a task with an ending. It is a way of life, a constant effort to maintain what has been built. Your grandchildren and their grandchildren will still be doing this work, long after all of us are gone. Hana nodded. She understood. The humans had not come to save Vela and then leave. They had come to join Vela, to become part of its story, to intertwine their fate with the fate of the Velen people. There is something I have always wanted to ask you, Hana said. Why us? Why Vela? There must be other worlds out there, other peoples calling for help. Why did you choose to answer our call? Do-Hyun thought about the question for a long moment. When we first received your signal, he said, it had been traveling through space for 300 years. 300 years, and it was still calling out, still hoping. Most signals we receive give up after a few decades. The beings who sent them lose hope, or they die, or they destroy themselves. But not you. You kept calling. For 300 years. He looked out at the garden at the flowers blooming in every color. We knew then that your people were worth saving. Not because you were powerful or important, but because you refused to give up. That is the most human quality of all. The refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seems certain. We saw ourselves in your signal. We heard our own voice calling out across the void. Unji reached over and took Hannah's hand. The truth about saviors, she said, is that they do not exist. No one is coming to rescue you. No god, no hero, no magical being from beyond the stars. There is only us. Ordinary people doing ordinary work, day after day, year after year, generation after generation. But that is enough, Hana said. Yes, Yunji agreed. That is more than enough. That is everything. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Somewhere in the city, music was playing. Children were laughing. Life was continuing, as it always did, as it always would. Hannah thought about Yuna, about the old woman who had stood on the roof of the council building and watched the human ship descend from the clouds. She thought about all the generations of Velans who had lived and died in the darkness, never seeing the sun, never breathing clean air, never knowing that one day their descendants would stand in a garden full of flowers. We will tell your story, she said to Doyun and Yunji. We will tell it to our children and our grandchildren. We will tell it for 1,000 years, until every Velan knows the truth. That we were saved not by gods, but by friends. Not by power, but by perseverance. Not by miracles, but by hard work and stubborn hope. Dohyun smiled and nodded. That is all we ever wanted, he said. Not gratitude or worship. Just the knowledge that what we did mattered. That we made a difference. You did, Hana said. You changed everything. Above them, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Each one was a sun, a point of light in the infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, on worlds they would never see, other peoples were looking up at the same stars and wondering if they were alone. They were not alone. They never had been. And somewhere, crossing the vast emptiness between the stars, other ships were traveling toward other signals. Other humans were answering other calls for help. The universe was vast and cold and empty, but it was also full of stubborn, foolish, wonderful beings who refused to let the darkness win. That was humanity's gift to the universe. Not technology or power or knowledge. Just a simple, profound belief that no one should have to face the darkness alone. The flowers bloomed in the garden. The stars shone in the sky. And on a world that had once been dying, life went on forever.